I know you've been lying to me, Sarah. Michael's voice was calm, but the intensity behind it could have ignited the room. Standing in the doorway, his figure loomed like a dark omen. His sharp features hardened under the dim glow of the chandelier. Sarah's heart skipped a beat, but she fought to maintain composure. "What are you talking about, Michael?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, her hands gripping the edges of the vanity. Michael stepped closer, his polished shoes clicking against the hardwood floor with unnerving precision. "Don't play innocent," he said, his tone cutting. "You think I haven't noticed the late nights, the sudden business meetings, and your convenient excuses?" Her pulse raced, but she raised her chin defiantly. "I don't know what you're implying, but if you're accusing me of something—" "I'm not implying, Sarah. I'm stating the truth," he interrupted, his voice sharp. "And I don't think you're ready to hear how much of it I already know." Sarah's gaze darted toward the nightstand, where her phone sat face down. She cursed inwardly, realizing she hadn't silenced the notifications earlier. Was this how he'd found out? "What exactly do you think you know?" she asked, trying to sound composed, though her voice wavered. Michael smirked, but there was no humor in it. "You've always been a good liar. I'll give you that," he said. "But even the best liars slip up eventually. And when you did, I was watching." "Michael, you're being paranoid," she said quickly, taking a step back as he moved closer. His eyes darkened. "Am I? Then why don't we start with this?" He pulled something from his pocket and tossed it onto the bed. It was a folded piece of paper, but even from across the room, Sarah could see what it was. Photos. Her breath hitched. Sarah hesitated, her hands trembling as she unfolded the papers. Her eyes widened as she scanned the photos, each one a damning piece of evidence. A hotel lobby. Her laughing with a man she thought no one would ever connect to her. And the most damning, her walking into a room late at night, his hand on the small of her back. I can explain," she stammered, her voice cracking. Michael's expression was cold, his jaw set like stone. "Oh, I'm dying to hear this explanation," he said. "Who is he? Your business partner? A friend? Or should I say, the man you've been sleeping with behind my back?" "Stop it," Sarah cried, clutching the photos tightly. "It's not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like?" Michael's laughter was bitter and sharp, cutting through her feeble protest like a blade. "So what is it, Sarah? A misunderstanding? A business meeting in his hotel room at midnight?" Tears welled in her eyes as she shook her head. "You don't understand. You've been so distant, so obsessed with your work. I didn't know where we stood anymore." Michael's expression didn't soften. "So, that's your excuse? I've been working to give us this life, and you repay me by betraying me?" Michael grabbed a glass of scotch from the bar cart and downed it in one gulp, his hand trembling. He stared at her with a mix of fury and pain. "I need the truth, Sarah. Right now. Every detail. Or so help me. I'll make sure you lose everything." Sarah's voice broke. "Please, Michael. I didn't mean for it to happen." "But it did," he said, his voice cold. "And now you're going to tell me why." The dam broke. Sarah collapsed onto the edge of the bed, tears streaming down her face. "It wasn't supposed to mean anything," she choked out. "He was just there when I felt like I was invisible to you." Michael's fists clenched at his sides. "And who is he?" Sarah hesitated, her lips trembling. "His name is Ethan. He's from the charity events I've been organizing." Michael laughed bitterly. "Of course. A philanthropist. How noble. You were everything to me." "Sarah," Michael said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Do you have any idea what it feels like to realize the one person you trusted most in the world is a stranger?" "I'm still me," Sarah pleaded, reaching for him. He pulled back, his gaze piercing. "No, you're not. The woman I married wouldn't have done this. Not to me." Michael walked over to the window, staring out at the glittering city below. "Do you know what's funny?" he said, his tone eerily calm. "I was going to ask you for one last night together. One last night to try and fix this before I made any decisions." Sarah froze, her heart plummeting. "Decisions? What decisions?" Michael turned to face her, his eyes colder than she'd ever seen. Whether to forgive you or to destroy you, Sarah's breath hitched. Destroy me? Michael, don't say things you'll regret. Michael's lips curled into a bitter smile. Regret? That's rich, coming from you. But don't worry, I won't act without thinking. That's the difference between us. You act on impulse while I plan every move. He leaned forward, his face mere inches from hers. So let me make this very clear, Sarah. You have one chance to prove there's anything left worth salvaging. One chance to convince me not to walk out of here and leave you with nothing. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she clutched his arm. Michael, please don't do this. I made a mistake, but it doesn't mean I don't love you. I was lost, Michael pulled his arm away sharply. Save your excuses. Love doesn't betray. Love doesn't crawl into another man's bed while their husband is out building a life for them. But I'm still here, aren't I? Sarah cried, desperation creeping into her voice. I didn't leave you, Michael. I stayed. Stayed, he said with a cold laugh. Stayed and lied. That's not loyalty. That's convenience. Michael paced the room, his mind working like clockwork. Finally, he stopped and turned to her. Fine. I'll give you a choice, Sarah. If you want me to even consider forgiving you, you'll end this affair tonight. No excuses, no delays. And then you'll prove your loyalty to me. Sarah's eyes widened. How? What do you mean? You'll cut him out of your life entirely, and you'll do it in front of me, Michael said coldly. Call him. End it. Now. Sarah hesitated, her hands shaking as she picked up her phone. Michael, can we talk about this first? There's nothing to discuss, he snapped. If you want to fix this, you'll do it my way. Or you'll find yourself out of this house by morning. Her heart pounded as she scrolled through her contacts, her thumb hovering over Ethan's name. The room seemed to close in around her as she pressed the call button. The phone rang once, twice, and then Ethan's voice came through the line. Sarah? Is everything okay? She glanced at Michael, whose steely gaze never wavered. Ethan, she said, her voice trembling, we need to talk. Michael's arms crossed as he listened to every word. Sarah turned her back to him, gripping the phone tightly. This has to stop, she said, her voice shaking. Whatever this was between us, it's over. What? Sarah, wait. Ethan's voice was urgent, confused. I mean it, she interrupted, her voice breaking. Don't call me, don't text me. We can't see each other anymore. It's done. Michael's lips twitched in satisfaction, but his expression remained cold. Ethan's voice turned sharp. What's going on, Sarah? Did he find out? Is he forcing you to do this? Sarah hesitated, glancing at Michael. This is my decision, she said, though her voice wavered. Don't lie to me, Ethan said angrily. You're scared. I can hear it. If he's threatening you, just say the word, and I'll... Michael strode forward and snatched the phone from her hand. Stay out of my marriage. He growled into the receiver before hanging up. Sarah's shoulders sagged as the silence settled over the room. Michael tossed the phone onto the bed, his face unreadable. It's done, she whispered. Are you happy now? No, he said flatly. But it's a start. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. How can I fix this, Michael? How do I make you believe in us again? He stared at her for a long moment before speaking. You don't just get to fix this with words, Sarah. Actions speak louder. And trust will take time. Michael poured himself another drink, his movements deliberate and calm. Now that you've ended things, we're going to do something you won't enjoy, Sarah. What do you mean? She asked hesitantly. We're going to see just how loyal you are, he said, his tone icy. Tomorrow, you're coming with me to the charity gala. Ethan will be there, won't he? Her eyes widened. Michael, no. Oh, yes, he said with a cruel smile. And you're going to show him exactly where you stand. Publicly, Sarah's breath hitched. Michael, please. Don't make me do this. Michael's gaze was unrelenting. You already made your choices, Sarah. Now you live with the consequences. He walked to the closet, pulling out a sleek black gown and tossing it onto the bed. You'll wear this tomorrow. and you'll stand by my side the entire night. If you even so much as look at him the wrong way, we're done." Sarah's lips quivered as she picked up the dress, her mind racing. "Do you really think this is going to help us? Humiliating me like this?" Michael's voice was ice. "It's not about humiliation. It's about proving where your loyalty lies. If you can't handle that, then maybe you're not the woman I thought you were." The next evening, the charity gala buzzed with energy. The city's elite mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, their laughter and clinking glasses a backdrop to Sarah's inner turmoil. She clutched Michael's arm tightly, her knuckles white as they entered the grand ballroom. Michael wore his usual air of confidence, his smile practiced and sharp. "Smile, Sarah," he said under his breath. "We're here to make an impression." Her heart pounded as she scanned the room, dreading the moment she would see Ethan. And then, as if summoned by her thoughts, there he was, standing by the bar, his eyes locking onto hers the moment he noticed her. Ethan's jaw tightened as he started toward them, his posture stiff with barely contained anger. Sarah stiffened, her grip on Michael's arm tightening. Michael noticed immediately, his lips curling into a cold smile. "Ah, there he is," he murmured. "Your friend. Let's go say hello, shall we?" "Michael, please," Sarah whispered, panic creeping into her voice. But Michael was already moving, pulling her along with him. "Ethan," Michael said, his tone pleasant but sharp, as they approached. "Good to see you again. I believe you're familiar with my wife." Ethan's fists clenched at his sides. "Sarah, can we talk privately?" he asked, his voice firm. Michael stepped in front of her. "That won't be necessary," he said coolly. "Sarah has nothing to say to you." Ethan ignored him, his eyes boring into Sarah's. "Is that true? Are you really going to let him control you like this?" "Ethan, stop," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's over." Ethan's expression twisted with frustration. "You don't have to do this," he said. "You don't have to let him manipulate you." Ethan's eyes flicked between Michael and Sarah, his jaw clenched. "Michael," he said evenly. "Sarah." Sarah couldn't meet Ethan's gaze, her cheeks burning with shame. Michael, however, seemed to relish the tension. "You know, Ethan," Michael began, his voice casual, "Sarah and I were just talking about loyalty. Such an important quality, don't you think?" Ethan's expression darkened. "I couldn't agree more," he said, his tone loaded with meaning. "Good," Michael said with a smile. "Then I'm sure you'll understand why Sarah and I are committed to putting the past behind us." Together, Michael laughed coldly. "Manipulate her? That's rich coming from the man who thought he could steal another man's wife and walk away unscathed." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "And you think you're any better? You think you're a saint in all this?" Michael's smile disappeared, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. "The difference, Ethan, is that I'm her husband. You're nothing. And you do well to remember that." Sarah felt the tension between the two men crackle like a live wire. "Stop it, both of you," she cried, her voice trembling. "This isn't helping anyone." Michael turned to her, his expression cold. "No, Sarah. What isn't helping is you still giving this man the satisfaction of your attention." Ethan stepped closer. "You don't deserve her, Michael. And deep down, you know it." Michael's jaw tightened, his fists clenching. "Get out of my face before I make you regret every choice you've made up until this moment." Ethan hesitated, his gaze lingering on Sarah. "If you ever decide you want more than this, more than being his trophy, call me," he said softly. Then, with a glare at Michael, he turned and walked away. Michael exhaled slowly, his shoulders tense. "That man has a death wish," he muttered. Sarah watched Ethan's retreating figure, her heart aching with guilt and confusion. The ride home was silent, the air between them thick with unspoken words. When they arrived, Michael poured himself another drink, his movements slow and deliberate. "You embarrassed me tonight," he said finally, his voice low but sharp. "I did what you asked," Sarah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I ended it, but you didn't convince me," he said, his gaze piercing. "And that's a problem." Michael leaned against the bar, his mind racing. "You want my forgiveness, Sarah? Then you're going to earn it, piece by piece." Sarah's stomach turned. What does that mean? It means I'm not letting you off the hook so easily, he said. You'll do whatever it takes to prove your loyalty. Whatever it takes. For weeks, Michael kept Sarah on edge, testing her loyalty at every turn. He monitored her calls, demanded to know her whereabouts, and insisted on accompanying her to every event. Sarah felt like a prisoner in her own life, but she endured it, desperate to salvage their marriage. One night, as they sat in the living room, Michael spoke quietly. You've done better, Sarah. I can see you're trying. Her heart leaped with cautious hope. Does that mean you're ready to forgive me? Michael's gaze softened, but only slightly. It means we're not there yet, but we're closer. As the days passed, Sarah began to reflect on what had brought them to this point. She realized that while she had made mistakes, Michael's relentless control and lack of emotional connection had driven her to seek comfort elsewhere. She began to wonder, was saving their marriage truly the right path? One evening, Michael returned home to find Sarah waiting for him, her bags packed. What's this? He asked, his voice sharp. I'm leaving, Michael, she said, her voice steady for the first time in weeks. I can't live like this anymore. His eyes widened, disbelief flashing across his face. You think you can just walk away from me? I don't just think it. I know it, Sarah replied, her tone resolute. I made mistakes, but so did you. And I won't let you punish me for the rest of my life. Michael stared at her, his composure finally cracking. Sarah? But she was already at the door. Goodbye, Michael. As she stepped into the night, a strange sense of freedom washed over her. For the first time in years, Sarah felt like she was finally choosing herself.